Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Oh, it's everybody's favorite Sunday. You all get extra points for being here the Sunday after Easter, because usually even the clergy aren't here. Where else would I be? So here we are. So poor Thomas. This is Doubting Thomas Sunday. Every year. Poor Thomas. Poor Thomas. Like, I guess there are worse things to have before your name than doubting. But I always joke that Thomas is the patron saint of Episcopalians. Because we struggle with this idea that faith is something that should just be handed to you, and then you accept it without any sort of wrestling with it, without any sort of questions. And most of us, I'm going to go out on a limb here, most of us in this room at some point when you were growing up were that annoying kid in the background, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. And so I want us to talk about Thomas because I think sometimes Thomas gets a bad rap in the sense that like, oh, doubting Thomas. So let's step back a little bit and put some of this in perspective. So John is our last gospel. In fact, John isn't really even considered a canonical gospel in a lot of ways because it's so post the actual interaction with Jesus, okay? It's written later. So it's really written at the beginning of the Christian church. So the writer of John has a lot of knowledge that the early ones don't. So Mark is really, really short. Mark is one of first. So John is a little bit different than the other Gospels. And it's written to people, much like us, are after the fact, right? So they have a little bit of knowledge, okay? So that's really important because the way that John says things has some hindsight, right? Hindsight's 20/20. God bless John. John's got 20/20. And so when it's written to those people, right? And that's important because, are you guys getting frustrated by how much I'm like trying to explain this but not doing it well? Okay. When he says, blessed are those who have not seen and yet come to believe, that's us. Because all these other people would have had interactions with Jesus, okay? But to the people who are in John's church, they would not have. So this is a message to them of how blessed are we who we don't get to touch Jesus. We don't get to go to the first wedding in Cana. We don't get to have those interactions. And yet, we come to believe through our own wrestling. And Jesus' challenge in that is, man, blessed are you who can do that. It is not a condemnation of questioning at all. In fact, I think there's an honoring of Thomas in this of, you didn't just blindly believe, because it is the courage of interacting with God that gives them the courage to leave the room and to spread the gospel. Thomas will end up being one of the most phenomenal of the disciples. He goes into Africa and starts what we now know as the Coptic Church, which is some of the oldest Christian churches. So Thomas does amazing, awesome things. And I think that's what makes good Christians. Not blind believing, where we hide in our little rooms worried about the world out there, but when we have come to that place of wrestling and questioning. And even in that place, Jesus shows up. Jesus shows up in our lives, and we're like, okay, now I get it. Anyone here never questioned this whole ridiculous thing called Christian faith? You really should. It's messed up. It really is. And I think that's important to say that. Can we say that out loud? What you and I claim to believe is wild and crazy and nuts. And it's true. But remember, true, big T true, is truth, not fact. And this is so very, very important for Thomas. Because Thomas isn't there when Jesus appears for the first time to the disciples. He's not there. So they all get to interact with Jesus. And they tell him about it. You've all had that friend who's like, you should have gone to that party. You should have been there. You should have been there. And you're like, it doesn't sound like it was that great a party. Wasn't that great. And so Thomas is like, yeah, I'm not okay with this. Like, this doesn't feel comfortable to me. I need my own experience of this. And we should all say that. We should all say that because there is nothing that is going to prove the Christian faith to you. The early church apologetics, and it does not mean that like we're saying we're sorry for the church, though, I mean, to be honest, we should. But the early apologists were trying to prove. So, okay. Oh, I shouldn't explain this either because it's going to be as roundabout and convoluted. Okay, anyway. When science becomes, the church invented science. Did you know that? Yeah, we started that. You wouldn't think that now, but yeah. We were the first scientists. Okay, so they decided that they could prove God's existence. So they did all sorts of different things to show that God is real, that Christianity is true, right? It's fact. It can't be done. You can't do it. Not really, truly. I can't prove to you that I love you. There's no scientific way for me to do that. In fact, love is kind of dumb when you think about it. Like, we're one of the few species that will actually sacrifice for each other, which is bizarre. Like, that's really not smart. Bees will do it, ants will do it, there are a few other things, but it's kind of dumb, really. So you cannot prove Christianity. It can't be done. Y'all like, well, why am I here? That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is having a personal interaction with Christ, with God. And that is what makes us Christians. Not because we can prove some argument or show something or that there's an algorithm somewhere. That's not it. It's having a personal interaction with the divine. And that's what gets Thomas on board. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Because guess what? What does Jesus do? He shows up. He has that personal connection with Thomas. And he's like, I'm here. I'm here. We're going to do this. Wow. Wow. Because even though we talk about this wild, crazy faith that we have, it doesn't make sense, does it? It makes no sense at all. And yet, in our faith and in our doubt and our question, Jesus is there in that. Jesus says, I care about you. And I want to be with you right now. Together. Wow. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. So this isn't about doubt or questions or any of those things. In fact, this is an acknowledgement that those things are holy. If you have not questioned, have you read this book? Have you? Parents, don't let your kids read it. It's terrible. Or at least, read the parts they're going to read first. wow, all of this stuff, all of these people's interactions with the divine. And God shows up for Thomas and says, I'm here. And we're going to do this. And friends, that's what God says to us again and again and again. In the midst of our doubts, we're not called out of our doubts. We're not called out of our questions or out of our trauma or out of our sadness, our questions, our disbelief. God comes to us in those, in that disbelief, in those questions, in that wonder. And wow, amazing is that? How amazing is that? That God shows up in our wonder. Ask the questions. Wrestle. It's in the asking and in the wrestling and the wondering and the questions that God shows up. Y'all be thankful I'm not a college professor, because you would not learn anything
We want
ever.
you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.